Let's see how to assemble the old orange Celestron telescope. Got the case for it here. I would have my tripod set up. I've got it aimed north here, although it doesn't matter in the classroom. This has the slot up here that I'm going to use to slide things into. Get the telescope out of the case, and I hold it in my left arm so I can support it that way. Pull the bolts out of here. I've got the two short bolts and one long bolt. The long bolt goes into the base by the Celestron 8 label. So I screw that most of the way in here. Now, that's good enough to support the weight, but I never trust that. I let it slide into the slot there, still holding the weight of it with my left arm, and there are a couple of holes under here. I can feel with my hand, and I get the short bolts started into those, making sure that I don't have them cross-threaded. And if they're cross-threaded, they're very difficult to screw in. That one. Notice I'm careful to keep my left arm here supporting that weight all the time. So, okay, that's on there. Let's see, things to tell you about this. I did not use anything other than my fingers to tighten those. They're pretty good finger tight. I can feel them there, but wouldn't want to do more than that. Next thing I do, I want to take this yellow cap off the back and this one off the front. To access that front one, I need to rotate the telescope up this way, and I do that by releasing this clutch here, and now I can move it. I don't want to change the aim on this telescope until I release that clutch. I can actually damage it by doing so. So, take this off, that's off, take this off. These store in the telescope case. I don't want to lose them in the dark. Okay, time to put other things on. I'll start with the Telrad. That goes on this rectangular base on top. And there are a couple little thumb screws here. You can't see very well. They're on the opposite side of the telescope, but the Telrad fits into a couple of slots there. And then I just gently tighten those thumb screws. This is plastic on plastic, so I don't want to push very hard. And that's on. Next thing to do, I put the finder scope on. In the eyepiece case, the finder scope has a little cap on the eyepiece of it, so I leave that in the case. It's got a dovetail base here. That's what you call that shape. There's something on the telescope that accepts that, and just slide it on there until it's nice and flat on the back of it, and tighten those thumb screws gently. They don't have to be super tight. Ordinarily, I don't have to touch any of these thumb screws on these rings here. Those are used for adjusting the aim of this, and we shouldn't have to monkey with that. Last thing to do on this is to put on the star diagonal, which goes here on the back. This is a threaded part that accepts that. The star diagonal is this gadget right here, which can come apart. You can undo this thumb screw and pull this off, but we never need to do that. In fact, ordinary viewing, we could go for years and never take that off of there. This is the part that you actually screw onto the telescope. So, and I want to do that gently. Everything on the telescope gets screwed on gently. Nothing gets tightened down a whole bunch. So, keep that in mind. Okay, that's on. The only thing we need is an eyepiece. On the eyepiece cases, I've written in Sharpie on the side of those things various places, so we can find them no matter what angle they're at. And this is the 32mm eyepiece. That's the focal length of it. We'll learn what that means later. And that just goes in here until click till it hits the end, and that's that. The telescope is assembled. Next thing we would do is look through this thing at various objects. Actually, the next thing we'd probably do is to collimate this, which those of you who learn to assemble it will learn how to do that. And it's not a hard operation, it's kind of fun actually. But that's something else we do. But if we were done viewing, everybody started getting cold at the end of the night, we take this apart, just in the reverse order approximately. Pull the eyepiece out, put the eyepiece back in its case, put the lid on the case, and put it back in the telescope or the eyepiece case. Undo the star diagonal just by doing the big ring on there, and loosen that up all the way. This thing is still assembled, and I just leave it that way. There's a space in the foam just for this shape. Pop it in there. I grabbed the eyepiece cover for the finder scope out of there. I would gently undo these thumb screws. They're not all that tight to begin with, because nothing is. And take it off there. Oops, drop that. This is not fragile, fortunately. Drop that, put that on, and put it away in there where it belongs. Let's see, the only thing I have left is the Telrad, and then I'll start putting this thing away. Telrad comes out. It's got a spot in the foam just for it. I made sure it was turned off. Open up the telescope case. Here's the rubber cap that goes on the back. And I'll show you something here about the, actually I'll flip this thing around to do that. On the front of the telescope, maybe the resolution's good enough to see that, there are two marks I made with a Sharpie long ago. And on this thing, which is the cover that goes on the front, there's also two marks with a Sharpie. There's another spot where there's a single mark with a Sharpie, but I want the one with two. And these two will line up with these two, and when I have that being the case, then the Velcro lines up and attaches the way it's supposed to. So that's the way that works. Then I'd flip this clutch again, rotate that till it's down there on the base. I'd rotate the other axis until I usually try to have the Celestron 8 label and the holder for the Telrad lined up together. And wherever that thing went, okay, I slipped the clutch so it's not going to rotate on me. Now it's time to take these off. Sometimes I do need to use a wrench to get those off after it's been assembled. This is an Allen wrench. I'll show you here. It's a 6-sided wrench that way. Usually, to get more torque, you'd put the short end in and lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Most of the time, I don't need that much torque to loosen this. I could just put it in there like this, and holding the weight with my left arm. I want to make sure I do that as I'm disassembling here. That one is a little tight here. But I don't need a lot of help undoing those because I only finger tightened them, but when it's cold out, if the temperatures drop 10 or 15 degrees while you were observing, it can be kind of hard. Oops, I dropped one. That's a drag when you do that in the dark, but we do bring flashlights out, real white light flashlights for picking things up at the end of the night, because every once in a while something gets dropped. If you happen to know Max Heinzman, ask him what he dropped out there one night. Okay, I've got the 2 bolts out of there. I'll pick up the one I dropped. And that's it. We're done with our evening observing, and the telescope has been put away.